Fertilizers. Plants need energy, that is light, CO2, carbon dioxide, and water to grow. Just as with animals and humans, all plants also need food and a proper nutrition in order to grow. First, plants use the food stored in the seed. Then, they get the nutrients from the soil through the roots. Plant nutrients are divided into two categories: non-minerals and minerals. The non-mineral nutrients are hydrogen, oxygen, and carbon, which originates from CO2 absorbed through the leaves. These nutrients are found in the air and water. In the process called photosynthesis, plants use energy from the sun to change carbon dioxide and water into starches and sugars, which are the plant's food. The mineral nutrients are macronutrients and micronutrients. Macronutrients are divided into primary macronutrients and secondary macronutrients. Primary macronutrients include nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Secondary macronutrients include calcium, magnesium, and sulfur. Micronutrients are needed in much smaller quantities but are necessary for plant growth and development. They are boron, chlorine, copper, iron, manganese, molybdenum, zinc, and nickel. When the soils are deficient in these nutrients, it is essential to enrich them and create artificial conditions for higher productivity of the plants by means of fertilizers. The most critical nutrients to be provided to plants for their growth are the primary macronutrients, each of them performing crucial functions in plant biology. Nitrogen is necessary for building proteins, produces carbohydrates, and improves the quality of leaf and forage crops. Phosphorus affects root growth, seed formation, and plant maturity, so it is essential for healthy root and shoot growth. Potassium is important for flowering, in fruit formation, and in disease resistance. Most fertilizers are based on the three major macronutrients: and according to the substances they consist of, they can be straight if they contain only one nutrient, compound or mixed if they contain more than one nutrient substance. The substances used to improve soil fertilization can be organic, inorganic. Organic fertilizers derive from animal or vegetable matter. Inorganic fertilizers are chemical products of either mineral or synthetic origin. So, what is the difference in the use between organic fertilizers and synthetic fertilizers? Organic fertilizers feed the soil, while synthetic fertilizers feed the plant. When we use organic fertilizers, the organic matter provides nutrients to the soil. These nutrients enhance the proliferation of microorganisms which produce the nutrients for the plant. On the contrary, when we use synthetic fertilizers, we provide directly the plant with the necessary nutrients. Chemical synthetic fertilizers. In the last 60 years, the use of chemical fertilizers has increased to meet the farmers' requirements for productivity, so that to be competitive in the marketplace. Since they contain the nutritive elements which are needed on most soil, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, as a matter of fact, they not only improve plant growth, but dramatically increase crop yields as well. Particularly efficient for the plant growth are slow-release fertilizers. The main advantage in their use is that the soil can be fertilized less often, and the nutrients are released gradually at a lower but constant rate. Moreover, these fertilizers release the nutritive elements at specific warm temperature of the soil. When the soil is warm, the plant roots are more active, and so the release of nutrients occurs at the exact time when the plants actually need them. However, if on the one side chemical fertilizers adequately used are favorable to plant growth and development with remarkable short-term benefits, on the other side they contribute to soil depletion over time and have negative effects for soil life. For example, potassium is lethal for earthworms, so as time goes by, the soil loses its fertility. Moreover, too much potassium makes the plant walls thin, and therefore plants become more susceptible to pests and diseases. Soluble chemical fertilizers, which are manufactured in liquid, powdery, and granular forms, are easy to store and to apply to the soil. But at the same time, their use causes major damages to the environment and the human health. They move in three different directions. Downwards, fertilizers are harmful because they go down to the deepest layers and pollute the water tables. Upwards, fertilizers remain in the vegetables we eat. Sidewards, fertilizers are dangerous because they affect the environment, rich rivers and watercourses, so causing the growth of water weeds and algae, which take in the available oxygen. The consequence is that insects and fish die. This phenomenon is called eutrophication.
Plants require several things to grow. Most of us know that they need things like water, sunlight, and CO2, but plants also need a variety of nutrients as well, things like nitrogen and phosphorus. Usually, plants will get all their required nutrients from the soil through their roots, but when the soil is bad or there's been a lot of erosion or leaching, farmers or even just people trying to make their lawns green will put down something called fertilizer. What makes fertilizer so fertile is that it's been enriched with these nutrients that the plants need, again mostly fixed nitrogen and phosphorus. But plants aren't the best at soaking up every last nutrient in the soil, and it's also hard to gauge just how much fertilizer a field needs, as soil quality can vary drastically over short distances. To be safe, farmers will usually apply excess fertilizer to a given plot of land. Better safe than sorry, you know? But instead of staying in the soil for years, most of the excess nutrients will be carried away by the rain or other forms of irrigation. These nutrients mix with the water and find their way into bodies of water like ponds, lakes, reservoirs, and even the ocean sometimes. With all these nutrients added, the algae, phytoplankton, and even plants in the water do the same thing the crops in the field do. They grow. Well, actually, they explode in numbers. This is called an algal bloom, and entire lakes can become covered in layers of plant growth like this. To some, this might seem like a good thing. Plants are good for the environment, right? Well, not always. First off, this floating layer of algae forms basically an impenetrable roof on the water, not allowing sunlight through to the bottom of the lake. Without the presence of sunlight, all plants below the surface cannot partake in photosynthesis. You know, metabolize, make glucose, live, that sort of stuff. But not even this is the bad part of it all. Many plants can store enough energy in their bodies to wait out these conditions. The real problem comes when all the nutrients are used up and the water can no longer support so much life. When this happens, the excess algae, phytoplankton, and plants die off and sink to the bottom of the body of water. Here, bacteria and other decomposers feast on the dead bodies in a chemical process of decay which consumes oxygen. Now, in a usual ecosystem, the amount of dead matter is relatively constant, so oxygen levels stay relatively constant as well. But when a bloom occurs, far more organic matter is ready to decompose, and so nearly all the oxygen in the water is used in the process of decomposition, and none is left for the animals living in the water. Without this, animals that use the dissolved oxygen to breathe, so things like fish, can actually suffocate. This causes even more death, leading to more decomposition and more oxygen usage. Basically, at this point, a positive feedback loop has been created. It can take a body of water a very long time to recover, though each one is different, and recovery depends on a lot of things, like how many nutrients leaked into the water, how big the body of water is, what organisms are present there, and so on. When this happens in lakes, native species can be suppressed and allow invasives to come in while the environment is still disturbed. If this happens in the ocean, the lack of oxygen can cause corals to bleach and possibly even die. All around, this can greatly damage many ecosystems and leads to a decrease in biodiversity globally. Nutrient-rich runoff can also be caused by things like clear cutting, which releases the nutrients which were kept in the soil by the plants, or also by things like animal farms, where nutrient-rich waste materials can leak into local bodies of water.
Organic fertilizers. The only type of farming compatible with long-term fertility is one in which animal manures and vegetable manures are continuously introduced into the soil. Animal manure includes dung and slurry. Vegetable manure includes compost and cover crops. Animal manure. Animal wastes provide a substantial contribution to the soil's needs for nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and other nutrients. The main types of livestock waste which are available on farms are dung and slurry. They are really useful for the soil fertilization because they improve the biological, chemical, and physical properties of the soil. As they develop, its water holding capacity, aeration, drainage, and friability. They also enhance the microbiological activity. They don't simply replace artificial chemical fertilizers, but feed the soil ecosystem by making full use of the natural resources which exist within the farm. However, manure is a good source of nitrogen and potassium, but has less phosphorus, so it is often desirable to add a chemical fertilizer containing some phosphate. Vegetable manure. Compost. Compost is obtained by the transformation of different types of organic waste, but in particular from food residues and prunings. Through composting, it is possible to recycle wastes and transform them into humus, the basic element for soil fertility. The leading role in the composting process is played by microorganisms, the natural decomposers of organic matter, which in their vital need to breathe and to feed, transform the substances present in waste into a mixture containing a good amount of humus, about 30%. Green manure. Green manure is obtained from cover crops. Leguminous plants rich in nitrogen, especially clover, alfalfa, lupin, and broad bean, are planted in autumn after the main crops have been harvested. Or even better, they can be planted in uncultivated soils or in overexploited areas. When the plants are still young, before they flower, they are cut and dug into the soil. Since their roots contain bacteria that fix the nitrogen from the air and release it into the soil, these cover crops are able to enrich the soil with important nutrients and therefore act as excellent fertilizers.